Oh yeah, we do.
I gotta see that footwork.
We do,
baby. I gotta see that footwork.
Yo, my neck got messed up.
Your neck?
Yeah, like I think it was from doing deadlifts, man.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
that's
because
tough.
I felt it, I felt it the other day, but
Right.
my landlord is this old Asian lady, man. She gave me this remedy, yo. I couldn't even go like this. I would get stuck.
Oh, yeah.
I'd go like this, and I'd like and I'd be froze up.
How much was you lifting, bro?
I was probably like, so it's what 245s and a dime on each side.
But it's how you lift it, too.
Remember, definitely how you lift it. Remember,
Yeah, and I think on one set I felt my form more.
But for boxing, you gotta remember you want lighter weights and more reps.
I know, man.
feel me?
Yo, man. I couldn't
All
take
those
it.
muscles are gonna have to flow.
I couldn't take it. I was like, yo, I'm shedding weight.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm
Right.
like, man, I'm
That's
getting
what
leaner.
you-
I'm like,
yeah.
man, hold up, man. Let me.
So
You
Sue
know?
just bought a heavy bag.
Oh man.
So we're about to put the heavy bag up. You know
Okay.
what I'm saying?
Okay.
So,
we about
you
to
know,
go crazy,
yeah,
bro.
man.
We about to go crazy.
man.
So listen, I'm going live right now before we even go on, and we're gonna start this conversation now because people they ready to talk about this.
I know they are. Yo, it's hilarious.
Yo, did you see the Deontay Wilder fight?
Now I'm gonna watch it tonight.
Oh
I
yes,
He won, right?
I can't
No,
wait to
well,
talk
I heard
about it.
I heard he lost. I heard he lost.
It's a draw.
But they called it a draw,
No,
right?
no,
But I heard.
yeah, they called it a draw, but the
Yeah.
argument is that he lost.
Wilder
I would say he lost, man.
But I've never had respect for Wilder's technique. He's powerful.
He's wild.
Exactly. He'll catch you and he'll beat
Why
you.
in this low seat,
Well, let's
man?
trade, bro. If you want, I'm trying to drop this one.
No, I want this up.
Oh, you want it up? Yeah, I'm trying to drop it. Oh, here it goes right here.
Yeah, that's
Something
the
like
remedy.
that,
The remedy must sit here.
Yeah, you trying to play red, man? Don't do that.
Yeah, now I feel human.
Don't do that, babe.
Now I feel human.
You feel what?
Human. I'm leveled out.
Hey, Jay, what they moved the offices?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I know Juan's office is right there.
Peace. Oh, peace. What's up, bro?
Assalamu alaikum, Maki. How's the brother? Good. Alhamdulillah, well, praise be to God. No complaints.
Brother, you could actually, you're gonna alternate the mics with Pastor Lewis.
Oh.
So you're gonna be in this chair right here, and y'all just gonna.
So when we
Share
put
that
the
mic.
mic in the middle, Jay? Like-
Yeah. I mean,
Like
that's
right-
totally
like
fine.
here?
Yeah, just know that when you do talk though, make sure you talk into the mic,
Okay.
cause
So we right here, Brother Kevin.
okay.
All right.
How do we share the show, brother? We share it from you, right?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna you could go right on the page and share it.
Okay.
That's how I'm usually doing it. All right. So wait for Brad, but we'll just get started with combo, and then when it's time to go live, we'll go live. Peace, bro.
Peace. How you doing?
Good to see you, man.
See you.
Glad you came through, man. I was like, once you started chiming in, I was like, oh man, I didn't even get Kev. I'm like, I gotta get Kev.
Is Catherine?
Who?
I thought Catherine was tagged.
He's gonna try.
Okay.
I don't know if he is. He said he does have to go out of town, so you know what I mean? What?
He's died.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. It's it was already on low charge, that's why. I don't know why. So we have to wait for it to come back up. Cool. But just make sure we gotta adjust this to hold on.
Yeah. I'll say.
Well nah, just bring it over here.
You tell the video thing is not mine. Like I said, rotate your phone. I ain't rotating nothing. You live.
Rotated, Pastor John.
Oh yeah, because they're looking at you sideways right now, brother.
Are they?
The people who are watching it like this.
Boy,
So you gotta stand it up.
The whole stand is so moved.
You gotta,
Yeah. There you go.
So it's upright now. Now everybody's upright. No headaches.
Well, make it happen, bro. That's your job. That's your job.
Man.
Handle that. Handle that.
You doing your
Oh.
own.
yeah, you everybody. I'm trying to get you. Better scoot over.
Let me do my own life.
So we gonna just like, cause like I said, we just gonna get started with this convo.
But what's the name of the subject?
The role of religion in today's oppression and community activism.
Okay, yeah, it was.
Yeah, so we just gonna get started, man, and then we'll go live in a few minutes. I'll say like another 25 minutes, right? But so, man, where to even start with this conversation? I'm not even sure. You know, there's so much in it. I can just say that when I look at when religion played a role in the development of black people, in the development of the community, man, we're going back 50s, 60s. So what happened? Like what happened where all of a sudden it just dropped, where we don't see it like that anymore? It's not the same influence that it had before. What happened?
First, let me just say this. I think people like yourself, brother, that's willing to just kind of put this information out here and doing what you're doing, and making sure that the people are aware of what's going on in our community, very important. That was something I believe that we may not didn't have the exposure that we have today of technology. So it was places that our people gathered, where the community came together, whether it was the church or just organization within that community, having some real conversation about the conditions that we as a people was facing. So again, I think once we started to become comfortable in making our way into society and probably being able to earn a little more money or being accepted, I think we've lost that fight.
So at one point it was all about the community, but then all of a sudden, because I actually was looking up. I'm gonna tell you what I found here was that let's see. So the average income of a pastor in New Haven, Connecticut is $100,000. The average income of a New Haven resident is $38,000. So you got all these, you know, and that's just on the average number. I'm not saying every pastor is making that.
Right.
So basically, as that income level came up, you know, we got comfortable, pastors got comfortable.
Well, I mean, you got to look at the way that, and again, you know, we're talking about the condition of the people and where we are today and what has happened with us being effective, you know, in our community and being, you know, advocate. I mean, being those that stand for our community, help our community be more healthier. When you look at an individual working a job that's earning a salary, opposed to an individual that is speaking to a group of people that may be given some type of offering or something to.
Should they be? Should pastors be given, and imams too? Like even with imams, because one thing I couldn't find was I didn't find the average income from imams.
Because imams don't get paid.
Really?
You won't find no imams, no, especially local imams. I'm not saying what's happening in outside countries, wherever, you will not find imams getting paid. It says in the Quran, Allah says that the prophets came and said that I'm a prophet of God, and I ask you no money for this. I'm simply here to spread the word. So you won't find imams getting paid. It's just not, you know.
Well, let me ask this question, but they do support the mosque. They support the work.
The community gives something that we call zakat. You know, it's charity,
yes.
And based on what they can give. But it's
right.
it's a documented fact what every dime is going to. It's documented. Like if it's the light bill is this,
right.
It's written down. Everybody know that's going
right.
to the light bill. If this is that,
right.
So
I'm just saying though, because it has to be the ability. Now, what individuals might do with finances or whatever, I think that should be something that they're held accountable to without question.
Right.
And then also based on the particular organization or the religious organization that you're a part of, if that's a part of their standard. But again, I think there should be evidence of what's going and what's happening, whether it's for the building, for the school.
Right.
Now, when anybody can abuse anything.
Right.
I mean, I think that's
were pastors always? Oh, go ahead, son.
I think this is part of the problem, and just hitting this in two places. One, religion is the problem, right?
I agree.
Mental health issue is a God, if you will, issue, right? It's not something that we created. Man didn't create that, so man can't answer it. Man can't solve it. That's a spiritual thing that we should be dealing with. If we're going to look a spirituality thing, we should be dealing with, right? And part of the problem, what you're speaking of, is when money did start becoming such a huge part of religion, right?
Yes.
So let's say if you have a pastor who is being paid to do his job, that pastor should not be living outside the means of the poorest person in that church.
Yeah.
I should not be paying $100,000 or whatever it is, and it's big money, and they're having Escalade parties, and
Escalade parties.
They have parties where we're gonna everybody coming to see the pastor's new Escalade. I'm not saying everybody does it, but I watch people talk about this and be a part of it and excited about it. Their children are going to the best schools, best colleges, where some of our children are having problems paying for lunch in public schools, but their children are going to the best colleges and all this kind of thing. That's coming out of the pocket of the people. So if the people are paying you, live by their means and give the rest to the church. Give the rest to the people of God. Give it to the poor. That's part of what zakat is. It's for the poor. It's for those who can't afford to pay for lunch in school, or So
I think it's a means of talking about abuse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
absolutely,
and so that's what
absolutely.
I'm saying. So I think that, again, is there, and abuse could be in many different ways, not just financially. I mean, there's certain things that could be disagreed with within different religious sects when it comes down to dealing with the people, the health of the people, and all of that. So we can go, and pick out certain things. However, abuse, it to me, and I agree with you, when it comes down to an individual living beyond their means, and they have all of these things that maybe, and they live in a neighborhood that's, definitely needs some restoration to it. Should they be held accountable or given more of the responsibility to put more into the community? I absolutely, without question. Are there people that are doing that? Are there pastors doing that? Absolutely. However, once again, like anything else, there's always the highlight of individuals or things that are going wrong. And so now let's go back to the intent and the purpose of religion, what it's supposed to be, like you said, from the spiritual aspect of it. Let's not get caught up in the financial piece of it. What is it supposed to be for? And have we been doing that effectively? Because we can get distracted from all the external things, but have religion been healthy for the people and their change? Have religion been able to do, in other words, religion is a pathway, I like to say. It's not a state, it's not a place where you build a monument. It's a pathway to where you can start to understand whatever you choose, whether it's Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, whatever it may be, it's a pathway. But sometimes we build monuments, and it's this way, and the only way. And so if you don't go this way, then you're not doing it the right way. So again, that's our own personal preference. It works for me, but there should be evidence. So I don't want to get stuck on the financial piece of it. Let's talk about the condition, and is it being effective to help change the lives of the people?
So I just want to go through some of the comments here real quick before we get started on the actual show. You know what I'm saying? And this was from the first post I put up about this show happening. Number one, I'm going to start with Kefin. Kefin, that's how you say his name? Kefin. Yeah, Kefin. I'm going to start with him. He said, we have 22 plus churches within a 2-mile radius of Connecticut Ave and Stratford Ave. That's in Bridgeport. I think we have like 350 on one block
City, right?
in New Haven. On the east end. Do they seem as though they have any influence of change? With all due respect, they don't play a role within my community. Just my observation, just my opinion. And I don't think he's alone in that. You know what I mean? So, what do churches have to start doing?
Is this about the church or about religion?
No,
it's about religion. But I think the reason why people are saying churches,
because it's more prevalent in the community.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Right, and again, and I want to say that too, because part of the it's not about attacking churches or pastors. I think that's just because people, like you said, more prevalent. So that's going to be the common term.
Yeah.
I'm talking about spirituality. period. So when we talk about religion, if I say pastor, I'm talking about the imams. So although imams don't get played, but they have taken a God complex on their posts. You know what I'm saying? So it's the reason why the brother feels the way he feels, and churches don't get involved, or mosques or whatever else may be concerned. We got to look at the finances. All of that plays a part of it, because that's when the religion came in. That's when we started misusing the spirituality, which is what our Creator said to us. Spirituality. If everybody was on that spiritual concept, then we'd be helping the people. We would be blessing the people. But because we are on a religious concept, and religion is man-made, it became about me. It became about mine. It became about what I can get. It became about what I can do for the people in these little walls, to some degree, and then the people outside of it really don't count and don't matter. So we're gonna feel it because we're not playing the part we should be.
I'm gonna go to a couple others. I'm gonna go to your boy Edward Trimble,
Baldy.
who went in. And this is what I am gonna make clear when we actually go live, is that we're talking about religion.
Yeah.
This isn't an opportunity to start going in on the church.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
But nevertheless, people went in on the church at first. And they said, I would like to hear from those who have been advocating for our people, not the church, because they are on every block in the community and rocking the deaf, dumb, and blind to sleep by feeding them Jesus Christ. Nowadays, we need more than spook gods. We need a methodology. We need a new methodology to our approach. These people ain't playing. They boxed us 9 different ways to complete the destruction of the original people. Of course, he's part of that nation of gods and earths. But what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, again, one of the things.
And Kev, you could hop in whenever you want.
One of the things that I say is that have there been, once again, abuse, without question, but I don't want us to get stuck on the misuse of something that could have had some great value. You understand what I'm saying? Again, abuse was there, the neglect was there, they took it, manipulated the religion or whatever it is. They knew that we were a people of faith, that we believed in a greater God. They found something that was attractive to us or whatever like that, that gave us some sense of identifying with a greater source, whether it was Jesus Christ, Allah, whatever name that had to be. They knew we were a faith people. They knew we believed in, we were spiritual people. So again, but it's deeper than that. And I like to say that we cannot continue on to just look at what has happened opposed to allowing ourselves to utilize what has been established, because regardless of what we think, there are people in generations that have been brought up on Jesus Christ. But not saying that there, again, that there was not the negative part tied to it, but it's worked for some people. So the question is not how we want to just attack what has been given to the people as what he said as poison, and keep them deaf, dumb, and blind. How can we surgically give them the truth about what he says, Jesus Christ? There is some truth about it. There is some truth in the book. But how can we cipher that out so that we can really raise the people from that condition that they've been put in?
Is it even... Go ahead, brother.
I think one of the things I heard Pastor Lewis say is that we're spiritual. And we have to remember what the church was rooted in. It was rooted in the black church, particularly the African American Methodist church. It was a difficult time. And we needed to get through slavery. And we were denied access of our religion from where we came from. This gentleman wrote a book called A Religion of One's Own. Religion, to me, is always constantly becoming our own. We're constantly making it. To me, and it may offend some people, because I have a journey. And let me say this, I've grown and evolved and not stagnant. Every day, I don't know, I'm someone different every day.
It's crazy, because I would say you grew and evolved.
Right.
Knowing you personally.
Right. So what I think Thomas More, who also wrote Dark Night of the Soul, talks about a religion of one's own.
Right.
And in the world of technology and knowledge, you just can't fool people anymore.
No.
And what happens is, when you look at it, take for instance, and I want to talk about mindfulness meditation. it's a scientific and a medical practice, but it's been a religious practice
Forever.
for centuries.
Yeah.
As some people say, it started in China. No.
Nah.
It started in India. No. You can't discount that the original Indians come from Africa, and
Right.
meditation is as old as we are.
Absolutely.
So, but it's a practice coming back now, being used because mental illness is a growing phenomenon, and that's being used to treat mental illness. I say that because the purpose of spirituality was to keep us in our right mind during a difficult time.
Yes. Sir.
Right.
And so, out of that, times change, religions change, and the needs that the people have change. So, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, traditional church not working in 2018. And to be honest with you, the first religious people you have in this country, Sikhs. Sikhs is a growing phenomenon. And it's a growing phenomenon because Sikhs recognize the truth in all religion. So what Thomas More is saying is that people are creating a religion that suits them. They might grab meditation. They might grab something from Islam. They might grab something from Christianity.
Yes, sir.
And they're breaking away from tradition. They're relinquishing that. That doesn't make sense anymore. I'll give you an example. People have relinquished the fact that on December 25th, that they are honoring the birth of a Savior,
Which is when
where
not
historically it's inaccurate, but they don't want to let go of the family tradition
Isn't that
of sitting around the table exchanging gifts. So they produce a religion of their own
Right.
by having Christmas Kwanzaa and people coming together, and we doing Black Wall Street and values at the same time. We come together. We have it all together relinquished because 400 years of slavery and us growing up in church, you don't get rid of that. Most people adopt the religion of their parents, and it's hard for them to let go. Very few seek outside of that. I'm
Yes.
willing to seek outside of
Yes,
that.
yes.
You know,
I'm
when
actually gonna mention that when we go live is that I forgot where I found the statistic. I gotta look it up in my notes. But any person, Black American that is 35 and under, is 3 times more likely to be detached from a religion, from a religious organization of any kind,
Wow.
and wouldn't identify themselves as such.
Well, the other
I-
statistic. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, statistics say, if you read, I think 2 years ago, Times Magazine said the millennials are actually charitable. They're more charitable than their parents. They give to causes.
Yes, yes, yes.
They just don't give to church, and they don't participate in church. So, you know, and I believe it has a lot to do with globalism, people getting together, and this chasm that I'm a Christian and a Muslim and we differ. They haven't bought into that.
Right.
You know, so I think that there is this movement.
Yes, yes.
Either you're going to remake
Yes.
the faith,
Yes,
and this is a tough conversation, because there are even
Very.
some people that say, "Oh, my religion can't be changed from 1400 years ago, and my religion can't be changed from 2000 years ago." But your religion is not working right
I
now.
think part of the problem is that, especially when it comes to the 35 and under, what they're seeing and what they're understanding is something that's not working. And it's not working because you're not seeking that for yourself. We've been going by for too long what we've been taught. And when we're not taking the time to understand that way of life, that faith, for the lack of a better term, that religion, when we're not taking the time to understand that for ourselves, then you're finding error. Then you're struggling with that. I think the main problem is that the so-called quote-unquote righteous-minded thinking people are not visible. See, the damage has been done by people that have hijacked these faiths. You got the ones that claim to be their Muslim, and I can't say that they're not, but I'll say claim to be their Muslim, but they'll strap bombs to their body and go blow something up. You're killing innocent children, all of these different things. And if you don't have a knowledge of Islam and understand that for yourself, that's what you believe, that's what you see, that's what you understand. And that's the error.
So so it's being confused by the extremism.
Is being confused on both sides. The KKK said they went by the Bible. They called themselves Christians. If you don't understand that way of life for yourself, then that's your idea of what Christianity may be. And the people that have the understanding, the true understanding, that's not going to rob the people that's following you, are not visible enough.
let me say this too. So what we're saying in all actuality is that the universe, and I say this when we want to go into this higher state of consciousness, and we talk about spirituality, because if we talk about spirituality, which is supposed to be that which you cannot see, then it is a process, it is something that's evolving, it's something that we are lining up with. So when you tell me you want to talk spiritual language, you really can't talk spiritual language. You can line up with what is evolving within yourself. Our young people are coming to the place of truth by default, because we have not been in a place to really teach them the truth. Some we have taken, like you said, becoming other than what we're supposed to be. So that truth is going to make itself known. It's going to bring itself to the surface. And the sad thing of it is, and sometimes it's violent. It comes forth violently and with resistance, rebellion, or whatever that. But like you said, Brother Muhammad, they didn't buy into it. But it is coming to the surface.
Now, in terms of money, I have a different viewpoint of that, because I love abundance and wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's nothing wrong with some of the greatest spiritual leaders were some of the richest people. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being very wealthy. However,
Okay.
You have to understand that religion is an institution. Martin Luther King Jr., he said that he didn't want to be a preacher, but he wanted to be financially independent to move the people. If he worked at somebody's shop, he couldn't be speaking freely. So the advantage is it's institution. What do you do with the institution? Some of them have provided schools. They've
Yeah.
moved 16 miles out
Yeah.
and provided their own community. In 1990, I pondered becoming a Rastafarian because my brother was, and from the military. And there are 4 different sects of Rastafarians. There's the Nyabingis, there's the 12 Tribe. 12 Tribe is the church that I was attending, Rastas in New York. But I loved the idea of a man by the name of Charles Edwards, who became known as Prince Emmanuel. And he did something extraordinary. He pooled money and resources, but he took his people to the mountains. And he built his own schools. He took the philosophy of Marcus Garvey, and he became an independent type of situation, which means that he was able to take the institution of religion and produce independence. And they never relied on the government for their well-being. So there's some ideologies that say, okay, yes, my thing is, if you're a millionaire, produce millionaires within your congregation.
That's right.
Produce,
That's
give
right.
the people what you have, empower them.
That's right.
So if I'm living well, there should be several people
Yes.
that are also living well.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the people that I admire that's often criticized is Reverend Ike, because Reverend Ike taught metaphysics.
Yeah.
And he taught it in a way that looked like he was a pimping preacher. But when you look at the amount of millionaires that he produced, even today,
Yeah, because when you're tapping into that metaphysics,
Mhm.
you're tapping into a different understanding. You're tapping into a more universal approach of spirituality that I feel empowers people more.
and he didn't use, one of the things that religion often uses is this idea of shame and guilt. It's
Yeah.
something that I had to let go of. This
Yeah.
idea of, control. That you feel bad if you don't give the $100 or the $200.
Oh, when I didn't pay my
Or the
tithes? Oh, man. When I was in church, I didn't pay my tithes. And I remember stressing that I didn't pay my tithes. I'm going to be cursed with a curse. Then I was told, oh, that's okay. Pay your tithes and then pay, I think it was like 5%. I'm like, word, Jesus doing it like that? Like 5% on top of the tithes?
When ignorance is complied with ignorance, and then
Gangster.
you got people that are doing that, then it makes it all bad. But like you said, even from what Reverend Ike, again, producing millionaires and people within that, and metaphysics, we're all under that. We all operate within that, but we're not knowledgeable of it.
Right.
And when you're knowledgeable of it, you can now you're able to.
And then you have to
help others
understand
benefit
evolution.
from it.
And most of the religious leaders that we talk about during the civil rights movement, let's be honest, they broke rank.
Yes.
On the day of the 1967, April 4th, Martin Luther King Jr. was in a dark place with
Yeah.
other preachers. They left him
Yes, they did.
because he decided to stand against the war of Vietnam. He decided to and it was against the Baptists have a collection of Baptist bishops that agree what should be taught. He decided to go against that.
Yes.
They could not stand with him. So you have to look at the fact, even historically, Some say the man existed, some didn't. The man Jesus was, according to scripture, against the teachings of Moses. So most of the religious people revolutionized a teaching to fit the time. And right now, as they say, in the, I remember Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson coming through down south with Michael, the brother who got killed by the police. And
Brown?
Yeah, Michael Brown.
Yeah.
And they were shouting out, "This ain't your mother's or your grandmama's movement." There are many people who feel that way with religion. This is not your mother or your grandmother's time or movement, that we are seeking a different kind of spiritual awakening. And there are churches that are being made, but they're being made and built on present day understanding. And if you look at it, they sometimes have a better following in congregation because people are understanding where they're coming from.
Right.
You to be honest with you, if you listen to a Joel Osteen,
Yeah.
you're like, "Where's this dude coming from? That's not what we taught such and such years ago."
Gotcha,
But
right.
it's packed. But it's packed because he's got books, and if you're into positive thought, positive thinking, you don't have to be a Christian to read his books and get something out of it.
Right.
He's learned something.
Right.
He's learned that in this day and time, people lack mental health. They're feeling oppressed. They need something to pick them up. So he and T.D. Jakes, they packaged their thought in a way that when people read it, they become inspired. So there's also a movement called New Age, New Thought, and a lot of your traditional pastors coming in the form of Christianity. When you look at their teaching, your traditional pastor would say, "What are they talking about? That's not what we believe."
Stay away from that New Age stuff. Don't talk about that. That
No,
was-
see, yeah, I want.
Why
I
don't
want
you
to
deal with that New Age
I
stuff?
just want to say this real quick.
Yeah. Let's say this, and then we're gonna wrap because we're about to go
Okay.
live.
So just real quick, again, if we arm the people with inside the church, they will start spiritual, regardless if it's the old tongue or and when we start talking about new wave and changing, then we're talking about religion again. We're talking about, and religion, I believe, is the problem on the people. Spirituality is the essence that we all contain. And that spiritual essence that we receive from God from the beginning of time is what will save the people today, because it's arming them. It's letting them know that this individual standing in front of me is just giving me the word, but I have that word within me that I can arm myself and cure myself. And we're not doing that. We're keeping the people focused on the person, the leader. Yeah,
Lowercase God.
That's
We're staying
religion,
focused on
and that's
Donald
hurting
Trump.
us. And that's hurting the people.
So let's check our headphones. Let's make sure everybody's headphones is dead right. Can you
What?
hear? No? Okay.
I mean, they beach. They still Dre Beach.
I hear static.
Where was it again? I think it was.
So Jay, we're sharing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, y'all sharing the mic, so you can move over this way. Brandon, you can come up. That was cool.
You're gonna have to slide over a little bit more time.
Who's this, Jay?
you talking about. I remember that scholar.
.3 WYBC, the rhythm of the city and home of the Juan Castillo Morning Show. This is Jay Kemp, and this is Moving Target Radio. And of course, I'm with my guest co-host, CEO of Her.
Good morning. How are you?
Zulima, what's up?
What's going on?
All right, and we got, of course, my co-host, brother Remedy Sharif. What's
Peace
going
and
on,
blessings.
brother?
Peace and blessings, brother.
How y'all doing, man? Y'all got something popping this weekend? What's good?
I don't.
You
Good to
don't?
be here.
Every
Nah.
weekend, we don't have nothing.
Nothing going on.
Zulima, you ain't got nothing? No.
No, I popped already last night. I'm good.
Oh. All right. Well, we are not gonna delay at all because we already started before we went on air, and we're going to continue this conversation right away because we never have enough time, and we definitely don't have enough time for this topic. So we're gonna start right away because religion in America for Black people specifically has always been the bedrock of our emancipation, but on the other hand, a tool used for persecution. So let's just go through the history real quick. All right, the European kidnapped our people, enslaved them, and first order of business was to strip them of their beliefs, specifically their religion. So they shoved the Bible in their hand, created an imaginary white Jesus, and justified slavery through the Bible. Eventually, as always, Black people took lemons and made lemonade and began to create our own institutions, which became central spaces for political organizing, public discussion, like we're doing right now, as well as immersing ourselves into a spirituality that at that time kept us sane and gave us means to mobilize against the oppressor. Eventually, other Southerners moved up north. We had Moorish Science Temple and Nation of Islam. This was regarded as the true religion of Black people. And while they disagreed, they all fought against white supremacy, and both became mobilization centers. And because they were financially independent, skills were produced like public speaking, organizing, a sharp political insight, fundraising. And the idea of empowering our community had more buy-in and movement behind the action. This was a long time ago. So what happened? Did the roles of religious leaders become so compromised that we became comfortable at the table and forgot we weren't invited? Where did religion in our own community lose its influence? And what role does religion have today to stand against oppression for marginalized people? What role does religion have in our community, period, to really push us forward? So today, to really unpack this topic, my guests today are Pastor John Lewis. What's going on, brother?
How you doing, Brother Kemp?
Brother Kevin Muhammad. Peace, brother.
Peace, my brother.
And we got Pastor Remedy Sharif. No,
Hey, not me, yo.
and we have Brother Hassan. What's going on, bro?
Good morning, family.
So let's just get right into this. We were already discussing some things. And Pastor John, I want to start with you
Why?
because you represent the church. Make sure you speak to the mic, brother. Because when we talk about what religion does in the community, we normally go to the church. Why do you think we go to the church and not the mosque,
Well,
and not the Islamic faith?
Well, first of all, I think because, predominantly the churches in most of the area, we have few mosques, and not saying that means anything by far. However, once again, generationally, that is what we've always migrated to. That's, without question, again, that was, there for us. But, some of the things you said, what happened, even with what they gave us, the Bible, and understood we had a religion and something that we practice. So I don't want to again look at it in all the negative aspects of it. They found something, like we said earlier, that was able to keep us confined.
Absolutely.
They knew we believed in a higher being or a higher source. So they gave us something, and what we did, like you said, we made lemonade. Did that take away anything from who we are and evolving into? I can't say that it did. However,
You can't say that.
I can't say that it took away anything, because we're resilient. We still are here. We still been able to stand through all what they have done, brother. So in a sense, the church or that religious organization that they meant to do us harm has really been the thing that's been keeping us together.
Well, was it keeping us together, or was it that we had to make it work?
It's still making it work keeps us together, brother. That's what I'm saying to you. That organization was what was keeping us together. Now again, I'm not ignorant of the fact that what they did and gave us the white Jesus and all of that to keep us looking at them indirectly, looking at them as being positive and us being something other than. I'm not saying that that's not true. However, us being who we are, we made lemonade, and we was able to get through those hard times, brother, in the fields, picking cotton, while we was being hung, while children was being taken away. All of that, it kept us. So again, we wasn't able to speak in our mother tongue. We wasn't able to speak in the way that we normally was able to speak before we came to this land. So we made it work for us. Now that's not taking away what was done wrong. All right.
So where do you think it changed? Where do you think it began to shift?
The buy-in. I think that once again you had those pastors or those leaders back then that they picked out. They handpicked them. And they knew that they was going to teach them about hell and heaven. They knew that they was going to have control. That influential Negro back then would be the one that was able to preach that Bible and obey your master. And they gave them the things to say. And so again, it just continued on to be that as it went through, time, as time continued on. And they saw the benefit of that. That was really the only place where someone was acknowledged to be important. If you was a preacher back then, you was important.
I mean, a lot of the leaders came out of religious institutions.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's Martin Luther King or Malcolm X and more.
Yes.
Even with Nat Turner using the preaching as a way to actually communicate revolt.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, and I know there was other ways that they were using religion in that way to combat whatever the oppression was at that time. And then we move forward, and we have now people up north doing that. We have people who are using religious institutions and mosques for that same purpose. So, and any one of the guests could chime in on this, but where did that change? Where did that shift begin to happen, where no longer did the religious institutions have the influence on the community and the people the way it used to back in the 50s and 60s? Where do you think that changed, and why? Why do you think that changed?
Well, when you say influence, are you saying influence in terms of religious practice or influence in terms of activism?
Influence in terms of activism and their own personal choice of religious practice.
So I just think that we've always, going back from Africa, have been a spiritual people, no doubt about that. And the reason why it wouldn't be a college professor to really lead us is because when you're in a situation that you can't see a way out, you can't use logic and rationale, or you give up hope. You have to have a higher ideal to guide you. For instance, last night my wife and I went and saw Creed, and here's a guy that was almost dying, but somehow, to me, it was a spiritual thing where his trainer was missing, so he lost the last time. But there was a connection between him and the trainer's voice, intonation, the way that he styled words, and the way that he was able to get into the psyche of this young man to help him win the second fight, where it seemed like it was nearly impossible. That is the preacher or the Malcolm or the Martin Luther King during the time of oppression, where people are being beaten and people are being robbed of their very human dignity. And if they were to use logic, they would say, we're done.
Yeah.
But if somebody could inspire them to see through all their pain a higher ideal and drive them and motivate them, and and I know that we only use 10% of our brain power. There are other elements that can make a person's body rise after severe pain and physical hardship, mental hardship. And so spirituality, people that have that gift to tap into people's strength at a time that they find no way, actually can guide them.
Yeah.
Now, where they take them, that's something different.
Right.
So, I would just like to say that, but the activists that were preachers were not the majority. They were the minority. As I said, in April 4th, 1967, the bishops of the Baptist Church had left Martin Luther King on his own because he decided to stand against the Vietnam War, knowing that they were siphoning off money promised to the black community after the war on poverty, or whatever they called. They were putting it in the war of Vietnam, and he stood against that. And so because he stood against that, he became an enemy of the United States government, and he became somewhat outside of the box of religion. So when they say activism, to me, that's not the majority. That's the minority. There are very few Malcolm X's, in my opinion, that call themselves Muslim. That's another level. You might go to masjid, you might pray, but the level of a Malcolm X to affect change on a global level, that's a unique human being that's transcended traditional religion.
With regard to the communities, though, do you, because we were discussing before we went on air, you don't feel like the community feels detached from the leaders? Like they're not on the same level as them anymore? Like, I personally don't practice organized religion. I'm spiritual and I read my Bible, I read the Quran, but I've pulled away from the churches because I don't personally feel like these leaders feel like they were on the same level as me, and I don't. You don't feel that or see that?
I want to take what you're talking about, and I want to bring that to Hassan,
Right.
Because that's exactly where I wanted to go with it. When you said about standing against oppression, and that's a really great point. Is that, you know, in our day, right? Now I read a statistic that people who are 35 and under are 3 times more likely to be detached from religious organizations, right? And I think the feeling of not really being able to be your full self in the day that we live in is even more prevalent now. And if people can't feel like they're their full selves, they're not going to join an organized religion. So,
Yeah.
Hassan, what do you feel religious institutions need to do to create that space where people could feel like that? Or do you think they do need to do something?
No, I definitely feel like we need to do something as far as if we speak of religious responsibility. But again, that religious responsibility should be to give the power back to the people. The sister made an excellent point, and which a part of, we saying it, but I think we're missing it a little bit, is religion, being it man-made, has divided and has taken the power away from the people. When we were putting up with all we were putting up with, as Pastor Lewis stated, in those fields, it was because of that spirituality. When Malcolm and Martin and different ones was putting those stools on the corner, they was speaking to the spirituality of the people. They were trying to hit the conscience of the people to rise against the conditions that they were going through. What took place is, folks, especially in today's time, the more we learn, the more we seen the benefit. So we stopped being enslaved to the European man. We stopped being enslaved to Jim Crow situation, and we started taking advantage of this book, of this good book, the scripture, the Quran, the Torah, whatever the books we look at. We started taking advantage and seeing how I can benefit now. Me, I'm the imam, I'm the pastor, I'm the whatever, how I can benefit. And now the people started losing that faith, and because I'm giving, look at all the posts when we look at Facebook and stuff like that. In order for me to encourage you to share something, I gotta promise you some type of wealth.
Yeah, it's a prosperity preach.
But instead of just saying, look at, share this spirituality for the Creator. Share the spirituality. It's about what I can benefit from it, right? So when we start selling that, it's like, I can't see you. Lastly, our prophets, may God be pleased with all of them, when they came to the people, they resembled the people. They sat where the people sat. They ate what the people ate. They were connected to the people. They were sent against those hierarchies, the kingdoms, those great, powerful people, right? Sent against them. But if you go into our religious sanctuaries and we sit out there and look into the pulpit, I'm looking at the Pharaoh. I'm looking at the big, powerful people. I'm not allowed to walk in the pulpit because I don't, measure up. but you're allowed. You got something special with God that I don't got, and that is false. That's not what God's prophets, may God be pleased with all of them, came to preach. They came to preach to surrender to God and nothing else. Get closer to God, and we started benefiting from that. We started taking advantage of that.
Yeah, so I think you made a good point about being yourself and self-acceptance, and because for many years religion made us feel bad about who we were.
Yeah.
So we felt like we were worse than filthy rags, but that's a teaching to keep people down, keep people looking up at somebody else and thinking themselves that they're inferior. I think we're going through a time where people want self-empowerment.
That's right.
And you have to look at evolution. You have to look at, what was taught 20, 30, even 15 years ago may not be significant now. So there's always, as I mentioned before we started, gentleman wrote a book called A Religion of One's Own. And he talked about how he first studied as a Catholic priest. As a young age, he actually became a Catholic monk at 12 years old. And he said, once I got what I was supposed to get, I left. I got married. His wife is a Sikh. He has no religion, but he took the principles that he had in his Catholic upbringing and he evolved with them. And I think that if you don't evolve, even political leadership right now, people are complaining that, wow, is there anybody in the Congressional Black Caucus that understands the needs of black people today? It's the same with spirituality. It is the same with sexuality. It is the same with all of us. We're political, we're spiritual, we're sexual, we're educational. Unless you address the entire person and the entire person can feel through what they're learning that all their needs are met, they're going to leave you. So, so I think in the traditional practice of religion, people don't want an antiquated approach. And the reason why I mentioned metaphysics and people like Ike and others is because they knew they couldn't take the literalness of the Bible.
Right.
It doesn't make sense as a literal book. There are some people today, there's another gentleman who I listen to quite often. He is a Sufi Muslim. And he has spiritual empowerment talks. But he uses Islam and he uses it in a way that your new age or your new thought people, you can grab it. Even though you're not a Muslim, this guy is saying to you, meditate, you empowering yourself. People want to listen. And when you tune in to his YouTube channel, he's got almost 1 million people listening to him. So that's an indication that the people today are looking for something different than what they were looking for 25, 30 years ago.
Well, Pastor, I just want to say one thing. I'm going to bring this to you, but I'm going to still stay in this vein. Is that, so when we talk about people being their full self, right, and religion playing a role in standing against oppression like it did back in the day, but we're in a different time. Before, when we were standing against oppression, it was white supremacy, and the brutality that was happening upon black people. Now we have more than just black people that are standing around us in our own community, right? And Martin Luther King had Bayard Rustin, who was right next to him, advising him, clearly a homosexual, James Baldwin, so it's not like Martin only spoke of racial equality. He was well aware of the other oppressions going on, but now it's even more prevalent. How can or should religion play a role, or as leaders, are you willing to stand next to someone who identifies as homosexual or transgender or something of that nature, that and stand with them against oppression, or does that compromise your beliefs?
Well, I mean, let me just say that. Let me just first say this. Back to the conversation, I'm going to come to that. But the scripture says, "Let he that is greatest among you be your servant." The problem is we don't have servitude for the people. That means that when that scripture says that, people that are gathering within this sanctuary, within the mosque, they are greater than me. I'm going to serve them. I'm going to put myself in a way that is going to feed them. Let us not forget, please, that again, we're talking about generations that were born into a faith that have been able to sustain them. So do we need to fix some things? Without a question. The question is, how do we fix it without them becoming just rejecting what you want to say?
Right.
Again, all of us are not conscious.
Right.
All of us, very few of us are waking to this place. So the question is, how do we bring that alive in the people without detaching them. Now, getting to what you're saying, what you had just spoke about, it depends. Once again, anything that's offending or jeopardizing a human life. Let's say a person's life is in jeopardy because they choose homosexuality or whatever their preference is, and they're being beat or people are abusing them physically, or there are experiments being done on them. That's wrong. So we would have to stand against that, or we would have to speak out against that, because it's violating life in and of itself. You know what I mean?
But on a regular, daily basis, do you support the LGBTQ community? Like, I've been to churches where they've actually had sermons and there are openly gay people coming, wanting to be in the church,
Yeah.
but they're offended because of the sermon that the preacher is speaking. Like, why don't, that's another reason why I feel like people do not come to churches anymore, because everyone's, you're better than me, you're not okay.
Or religious spaces, period.
Right,
Yeah,
religious
yes.
spaces, I'll say that because I don't wanna keep saying churches, but religious spaces, because people are being outcast, pointed out.
So
And
let me,
those could
yeah.
be the future community leaders.
yeah,
Right.
so
Those
let-
people could be the future activists, but they don't feel themselves, so they're going to detach and they're going to create their own
So let me-
nonprofit or
right.
space, which makes it independent.
So let me tell you how I evolved and got to the point where I
We
am.
only got
No.
because
So-
you got a journey, brother.
Yeah.
So I came out of the church growing up, where homosexuality was a sin. But then I saw that the choir directors were homosexual. I saw homosexuality in the church.
Oh yeah.
So they were benefiting by name. One of the churches I went to, which I won't mention, had a phenomenal choir, one of the best in the country. They won BET. But the choir director and those that were in the church were homosexual, and people knew it. One of the gentlemen that inspired me wrote a book called God Is Not a Christian, Muslim, Jew, or Hindu. He resides in us all, through us. And his name is Carlton Pearson.
Carlton Pearson, yeah.
And Carlton Pearson discovered the hypocrisy because you had gay pastors, gay preachers. And so when you are hiding yourself and you're inauthentic, what you produce is repression, mental illness, and an issue. Homosexuality is not new. If I was against homosexuality, I wouldn't respect Angela Davis, James Baldwin. These are people and leaders among us that were homosexual and moved the community.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so in today's setting, and to be honest with you, you had a Catholic church where people weren't allowed to marry, but it was also a good place that if I was homosexual, that I would be with other men, but the repression of the sexuality and not admitting makes a person sick and has a mental problem. So what I'm saying is that the religion has been sexually oppressive and repressive, where people could not express who they truly are. That day is not, today is not a day where you can connect with this youth community and be sexually repressive, because sexuality is all out there.
Right.
And if you can't include sexuality in your teaching and be authentic about it. So I've gotten to the point where people's sexuality is their sexuality. And everybody has a spiritual walk. I have people in my family that I love and admire that are lesbian. And having this conversation with them, they are no less spiritual than anybody else that is straight. And I know a lot of people are angry with me because if you heard a speech of mine 15, 20 years ago, I have used the word faggot. And I have, because there's tapes and CDs and videos out there of me, and I have used the word sissy and faggot and switch it and all of
that.
and
try to chop that up and
yeah,
say he said this.
yeah, and all of that. But my evolution is my evolution.
Right, yes.
And I saw that. I would say though that even in America, a black person that is a homosexual and a white person that is a homosexual has a different fight. But I think if we were to be authentic, the church, and I'm just gonna say it, the church is filled with homosexuality.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're a preacher and you don't acknowledge that and work with that and deal with that, then you are too guilty of being
We're
a
going
hypocrite.
back to the church again.
So,
though.
so
See,
yeah,
and that's
we
what
are-
I'm saying,
but-
brothers.
and this is only to really address that the elephant in the room is when we talk about standing up in today's society for the marginalized, for the disenfranchised, for the oppressed. You know, we cannot just say we're just talking about black people today. You know,
Right.
we got to say that in our community of black and brown people, we have people who identify as several different ways.
Right. Yes, sir. And with that, and I'll try to be as quick as
Yeah, because I
possible.
want to. There's other areas of this
Yes, sir.
conversation I want to touch on.
So I'll try to be as brief as possible. And it's gonna come off raw because I'm trying to be brief, but it's not.
Make
intended
it
to be
raw, brother.
No, it's not tend to be raw. If the word of God, and everybody can have their interpretations, if the word of God says that that lifestyle is unacceptable, we can't water it down and play with it. Not in a it's about how the message is being delivered. There's no compulsory in Islam. There's no force and no kind of religion, if you will. But we are responsible to educate and to teach. So if you got people in your communities with problems about educating and teaching, not pointing nobody out, not making nobody feel uncomfortable, but speak the word of God. I still admire James Baldwin and certain ones of them that we know are openly homosexual and did it, but it doesn't take away from that behavior is between them and God. God is going to judge them on the day of judgment for it. But I too will stand against anybody who's being mistreated, ill-treated, beat up, this, that, and the third. But I will definitely, if we're teaching, I'm going to teach that Shaitan said that he was going to make us deface the nature in which the way God created us. And I believe, based on the book of God, that that's part of it.
And I think that's important, to hear from religious leaders, because in today's society, I believe that those who are in our community that identify as that do not feel that support, and that you would stand with them when it comes to when they're fighting against oppression that is upon them in our own community. And it's important for them to feel that even if I'm not comfortable enough to maybe join your mosque or join your church, at least I know that when I have this initiative in my community, I can come to you and say, hey, we need your support.
And the thing of it is, brother, like Hassan was saying, the message has to be so universal and not picking out one's fault. If one that comes into the church that practices that or lives by that way, it is not that you have to make them feel uncomfortable in that. The message should be so universal and that they will check themselves. If that's something that they're doing that it makes them feel uncomfortable about the words I speak, not identifying them, then that's something they have to process.
Right, that's right.
But for us to identify them and to point them out and to be able to single them out, that is wrong.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
So we're not in a position,
That's
let me
right.
say, to say what you're doing is absolutely wrong. But if I stay within the confines of the truth and speak the truth, then let you process
Let it
that.
be that.
Yes.
So another area that the religious institutions used to play when it came to community development is education. People were educated in a lot of these spaces, not just on public speaking and community organizing, but understanding political environment and climate, understanding, ways to manage the funds, and now it seems as though in these religious institutions, the only thing being taught is the spiritual faith. And I'm not saying that doesn't have its place, so obviously it does, but the religious institutions used to be more than just the faith that was being taught. It was, how are you going to take this faith, how are you going to empower yourself in our community, and where we can be self-sufficient, where we can begin to build our community. Do you believe that's being taught, and what needs to start changing in our day to day to start really teaching the way we used to in these religious institutions?
That's a good question, brother.
I feel like, real quick, I'm just gonna go real quick. I feel like the institutions of faith have been hijacked, and for the most part, we're living in a society that wants to dictate to us, and most people are willing to just go that route. Again, these faiths from years ago, and we're talking about years when the prophets roamed the earth, God be pleased with them, has not changed until now. The same message in those faiths is the same message you can stand on today and be successful in life. The difference is who is teaching these certain messages. We look at these religions and get the idea of these religions from those that are crooked and that are teaching it. Again, the righteous-minded thinking people are not visible. We know that youth and people tend to gravitate towards what they see. That's why they feel the way they feel about religion. We need to bring it back to the faith. We need to get true understanding of what faith is. Real quick, the Creator says in the Quran, Surah Asr, by the token of time through the ages, I see refuge in God from Satan to reject it, with the name of God most gracious, most merciful. By the token of time through the ages, verily man is lost, except those that have faith. And there is more to that. But if you don't have faith for yourself and you're relying on somebody else to give you some sort of faith, you're going to be among the lost.
I think the other thing is that religion a lot of times teaches us how to die, but not how to live.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the teaching is geared towards after you die.
Yeah.
It's geared towards sweet by and by. But you look at a person sometimes in the pulpit, they living good. They living.
As a matter of fact,
So-
the average income of a pastor
Oh,
in New Haven, Connecticut is
Here we go.
$100,000,
Right.
as opposed to the annual income of a New Haven resident is $38,000.
Right. And I said before, with me, I don't mind money making. I don't mind prosperity. I love it. Just empower others to also be prosperous
Yeah.
and live the same way. But my thing about it is, I never looked for a pastor to educate me. I've never looked for a religious person unless that religious institution delegates well. So just because you're a religious leader don't mean that you're a great educator.
Right.
Make way and let the educator delegate and give some
Sure,
classes.
sure.
Yeah.
I was in a room with Pastor Jamal Bryant out of Baltimore, and he said that he learned business from the Jewish synagogue. He took classes there.
Oh yeah.
And he said that in the Jewish synagogue, they don't ask for money and charity. They don't browbeat people. What they do is those who have businesses, they contribute from their businesses to support the synagogue. And a portion of that is used to set up business classes taught by business people that when they get a loan sum, they're fronted a loan now. They have their own economic banking system. So when they and remember they created credit too.
Solutions.
Credit was
Solutions.
produced. Credit was organized by the Jewish community.
Yeah.
And when they moved out of the ghetto, they owned the ghetto. Blacks and Hispanics moved in, and they established mercantilism. So what happened is they front the money up, sort of like what West Indians do with Susu and Partner and all of that.
Yeah.
And they also give back for the next generation of entrepreneurs coming in. And they set up the synagogue as a way that you can walk to the synagogue so they self-support their businesses because you live there.
That's
So you might go in the black community and cut a fool, but you don't go up in the hood of the Jews and cut a fool because they have married spirituality, business, self-sufficiency, and they're self-sustaining, self-supporting. So that in and of itself, the rabbi is strictly the Torah. So there's some people, when I go, you're strictly spirituality. You can teach me that. But be wise enough to set up institution where let the businessman teach business,
That's right.
let the educators
That's
teach
right.
education, and so you have infrastructure that you set up, and you are there delegating, get out of the way and let the experts teach the people.
You actually segued into a good part of this discussion, which is, well, what are some examples of what religious institutions are doing that are equally empowering the people, but also the community? The Jewish community is definitely one to look at and see how they move, how they operate. I think that's crazy important.
Absolutely.
What are some other examples, Pastor Lewis, that you know of churches here in New Haven that are doing some things that are really empowering the community that we might not even know of?
Well, I cannot say that.
Wow.
Wait.
There's some pastors right now like, word, Levi.
No, because, and I'm saying that not because they're not putting forth effort to do it. You're talking about New Haven, okay? Yeah. Hello, New Haven. I do believe there are pastors that are working to do some things and uniting together to make a difference. However, collectively, that's what we're saying. Collectively, again, there's individual success, but collectively, as brother was saying, them coming together, I believe that's something that we really have to think about doing. I know Daddy Grace and them, I mean the church, no, I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I didn't mean to.
No, but I'm just saying, they've learned some aspects of that unification, understanding how to buy and pay for what it is that they want to know. So they probably learned that concept. Again, that's something that we here in New Haven that we've been attempting to do, has to do. And it's because it has not really been done on a unified level.
Because we have, and the joke is always that we have, but literally we have over 200 churches.
Yes, brother.
Here in New Haven.
And the reason why, once again, because all these egos and people that are self-driven, they're not thinking about others. They're not humbling themselves. They want, once again, I do believe us as a people, we've been so traumatized, we forgot all about it. And we're operating and being able to function in a way that keeps us so against each other. We don't know how to humble ourselves to unite with each other. And that's the problem. That's why the people don't want to come to the churches. That's why the churches are dropping in numbers for the most part. Yes, we have some churches that are having some success, but it's not enough success. And this is why it's becoming unattractive to the people.
Hassan, do you see the same division within the mosques in New Haven as far as there being so many and yet still initiatives towards community development aren't coming together, unified under that? Do you see the same type of division?
Unfortunately, yes. But it may be for different reasons, but unfortunately there's not a lot of coming together, like to build something as far as saying this is just one for the whole. You feel me? Like we're trying to benefit the whole community. So unfortunately, yes, everybody is in their own little houses and trying to do. Now we do have good fellowship in the sense. I'm sure the other churches and everybody else do as well, as far as banquets and supporting each other and different things like that. But unfortunately, what Brother Muhammad stated, and I'm going to get that information from him as far as how the Jewish community does implement. It's something we can steal from, and at least
Steal?
It's still, yeah, I didn't know
Just
about
use
that.
it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Still take it.
Yeah, use
But
it.
you know what I mean.
Because I think, because even what the Jewish
Use the
community
idea.
is doing,
Still there.
I believe, when you talk about the pastor
Right.
delegating somebody to
Sure.
educate in
Right.
certain
Well, let
areas, I believe we did that
We
back in the
do
day.
no, we do that. You know what I mean? But it's in our own little houses, and so it's not big enough
For
to
the
be able to
impact.
right.
Yeah.
But if let's say we did that as a whole, like we all have our own little houses, and I don't think it's bad that there's so many churches or so many mosques. I think the bad thing is that all those churches maybe don't have once a month one meeting where all the leadership comes together and find a way that something we can do where everybody does it together. Same thing with the mosque, you know what I mean? And something like that would be excellent because we can say, let's have a meeting to see if we can do this.
Yeah.
We got enough finances in different areas. We can start pulling it together and start building. That would be amazing.
I think if every church raised $2,000,
Right.
whew,
But
that's a lot of money.
you know what, Brother Scholar, that has been, we've been meeting, and once again, the problem is, again, these egos get in the way.
Yeah,
But I believe
unfortunately.
what's happening, someone else alluded to it, that our young people not wanting to go to churches, they're uniting together. And they're coming together and doing things and putting the church or the religious organizations on blast. Like, y'all don't want to do it, we going to do it. So hopefully that will ignite even that. You know what I mean? That would bring it together.
I think the other issue is my transformation. I don't really see religion. I see oneness. When I meet somebody, I don't see a Christian, I don't see a Muslim. I see oneness, and I've arrived at that if you deal with people in that way, if you already started separating me, because Christianity is thousands of denominations. Islam is 73 different sects and different denominations. I think when we move into a global community and we begin to see oneness, and even in our black community, the distinction between who you are, as we were brought up, the person's sexuality, where they go, whatever. When you're dealing with economic issues, that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And when you're dealing with education issues, that doesn't mean anything. People have to have a sense of oneness.
Yes.
And what makes a leader
Yes.
is not that they're smarter or even more righteous, so-called. It's their ability to unite and pull and make people feel oneness.
Yeah.
That's something that Garvey had.
Oh yeah.
That's something that you have a gentleman, you watch Wild Country, that's something that Osho had. That's something that these are people that were able to inspire masses of people, and they weren't busy making distinctions.
You said
They looked
Wild
at the
Country,
need. Right.
that documentary.
Right.
I recommend everybody to check that documentary out.
But what he was just a prototype of what spiritual leaders were communities
Yeah.
could do. Garvey had a community.
Absolutely.
And he found this community in New York, in America. So what I'm saying is, I think, to be honest, we're looking at sometimes people to do too much, and we're putting it on one person. And I'm not saying hold religious leaders, not hold them accountable, but look at the pockets of people that are taking monies
Right.
and doing something with it. You have some people that have schools. You have some people that have businesses, and then try to help and join those people. That's the idea of a Black Wall Street. When I see Black Wall Street, I'm seeing all kinds of people. I'm seeing people of different spirituality, different sexuality. I'm seeing people that come from different communities,
Yeah.
but their thing is to come together, pool their resources. And I think what religion is why it's dying of divisiveness. It
Yeah.
lacks oneness. It lacks unity. So, and the language we use. Now, if I talk religion, we're so busy fighting. But once we talk spiritual truths,
That's what he said.
love,
Find common ground.
sharing, find common
Principle.
ground, I forget what you are. And I think
Principle.
that principle,
Yes.
it's called and I'm going to be doing some talks on it in January. It's called the principle of oneness.
Yeah.
And when you meet somebody, if you can tap into that energy, you can get them to go with you. And pretty soon you got a group of people that are one, moving for one common accord. Million Man March was a glimpse of that.
Yes.
And so I'm saying there are people that if you teach spirituality and oneness and those kinds of principles, rather than division, you'll get people to move.
And what I see is that a lot of times when we do, as spiritual leaders, or not me, but when spiritual leaders use their congregation to do certain things, it's still for their church or their mosque.
Right.
It's not in the vision. It's not necessarily our community.
Right.
So that needs to shift as well. We only have a couple minutes,
Okay.
but I want to get to your point,
All right.
and then I also want to hear from you about what you advise other religious, or what would you charge other religious leaders to do along with you.
Right. So just quickly, because I agree, you know what I mean, totally with what Brother Muhammad said. Whatever for the panel, you know what I mean, praise be to God, deep. But what we do encourage in our community, one, we do try to think outside of our small center, our very small center, and we try to encourage the youth to take the majority of responsibility of whatever we're doing. Trying to get them involved in teaching, leading the prayers, calling the prayers, whatever we can get them to do, reaching the people, because it's their generation, their mindset that is we're basically trying to educate and reach. So one of the things that we can do is pass the torch. Let's not wait until we're being put in graves and now we're leaving behind inadequate forces trying to figure this thing out. Pass the torch while we're still fresh, where we can encourage and energize and correct, pass the torch.
And maybe are you all open to, the two religious leaders here, are you all open to having more of this partnership and discussions with people from other faiths?
Absolutely.
Because I think religion could increase its influence if we're thinking about oneness and allowing other faiths to come in.
Myself and Pastor Lewis already started that. The only thing that messed with it was my schedule, my son running them back and forth to Bridgeport. But we already started somewhere. We were trying to sit down and build and get if it was once a month, remember what we were going to do, but once a month where we're bringing everybody together. One worship,
That's
one,
good. That's
absolutely.
important.
Absolutely.
Just to let you know, there is a movement that started, I think, about approximately 20 years ago, called the Interspiritual Movement, where the leaders do claim a faith, but they're obligated to learn about others and to use principles of others and to have a service.
Okay.
And then this service looking at the needs of the people. I attended one last week because that's the direction I'm moving.
Right.
And I see that, in a global world where you can get on the internet and see all kinds of stuff, you better learn to talk the language of other people.
Yeah.
And I think we can move people to produce education centers. We have to be minded that what the needs of the community are.
Exactly.
School is big in the Black community because I don't care how many charters or whatever, people haven't found the golden bullet of how to educate our children.
So
That's still open.
I gotta cut you off because we're wrapping up now. But real quick, let's start with Pastor Lewis, where they could find you, and then we'll go to you for Muck Mud, and we'll go down and
You can reach me at, again, my name is Pastor Lewis, Life Center Ministries, 203-285, what is it? 0337.
All right, Muck Mud.
Muck Mud Inc. It's 203-440-5170. We're also moving into mentorship, so we'll be providing mentorship for youth as well.
Yes, yes, sir. So I just want to say two things. One, our Imam Warfi Muhammad, back in 1975-76, the same thing started. May God be pleased with him. Started interfaith movement, bringing the communities together. And we can be found at 105 Sanford Street, the Ashura Islamic Community in Hamden.
And make sure you check out the new Wednesday Night Crew, 6 to 10, all right, right here on 94.3 WYBC. And make sure you check out Brother Yusef coming up next on Electric Drum. It's 94.3 WYBC, the rhythm of the city.
Right.
All right, we out. Yo, great job, yo.